system is still hanging across the Northland. What that is going to continue to bring a bit of rain, also bringing in that cooler and breezy conditions, though that system is going to start to move on out. By the time we get to the weekend, actually going to see some more mild conditions as well as more dry conditions make their way back in before we're likely to see another system make its way in as we get in the next week, and we're going to overall be entering a more active weather pattern next week. But let's start with that system because I showed this yesterday morning. The current mean sea level pressure, and notice it's now way off. The area of low pressure is further off to the east and it is quite less organized as the system is winding down and has occluded, which means it's starting to weaken now. But we're still going to be seeing those showers here in the Northland. As you can see that we have a bit in northern Minnesota here and there, some isolated scatter showers, some along the south shore going into the UP, but the main band is part of a gravity wave band that's going from Douglas County up and across Lake Superior. So Douglas County is where we're seeing quite a bit of that rain currently, and we'll probably continue to do so early on before we start to finally see that rain make its way out as the system continues to dissipate and move eastwards. We can still see some in the overnight hours, especially as we get into the UP, maybe across into northern Minnesota, a couple showers here and there. So some isolated showers will still be possible, maybe even a few snowflakes overnight. But outside of that, we're really not going to be dealing too much of that rain much longer once we start getting into our Thursday. And that's when we're actually going to start seeing that sun finally make its appearance as well. So some of us finally going to get a break from the clouds after a pretty cloudy and grayed out outing we've had so far this week. And when it comes to precipitation totals going forward, not too much to be expected. Again, we're probably going to expect quite a bit still in Douglas County there along the south shore and into the UP. But outside of that, really just some trace amounts of rain with any more of these isolated showers we see. So we can still see a bit of rain, but it's really not going to be like what we have seen up to this point outside some areas along that south shore. Now let's talk about the winds, because as the system is still here, the winds are still going to be a little breezy and out of the northwest. Now yesterday it got quite windy. We saw some pretty significant gusts at times, but for today, we're mostly looking at those gusts, mostly 20, 25 miles per hour out of the northwest, maybe a bit more at times. And then as we go into Thursday, still a little breezy, but notice it just continues to weaken. So the breeze by the time we get to Thursday is going to be a bit lighter. And we can still see a bit of wave action. Again, not like we saw yesterday, but once you get along the south shore, 3 to 6 foot waves, once you get around the Apostle Islands, that's going to increase once we get into around the UP, where we can still see some waves getting closer to 10 feet at times. So a bit of blustery. I think some of these small craft advisories are going to expire earlier this morning, but once you get more along the south shore, those will go into this evening. Now with these winds, going to be keeping us cooler along with that cloud cover. So right now temperatures are in the 40-degree mark this morning, and as we get to afternoon, not going to warm much at all. Going to be staying in the 40s across the Northland. And then as we get into the overnight hours, we're going to be dipping down into the 30s, maybe even upper 20s. Thanks to some of that clear, it might actually get a little chilly in some spots, especially the further west you are. And then as we start to get into our Thursday, notice the temperature is still going to look like be cool. Now we get a bit more sunshine and we probably expect those temperatures to push more into the mid 40s, maybe even upper 40s. But for now, it looks like we might be seeing some low 40s thanks to that breeze and thanks to the clouds that we still have hanging around. And we're going to see a change though. One of the changes we're going to see is we're going to continue to see dry conditions, not just starting on Thursday, but going up into the weekend. Though cloud cover will start to pick up this weekend. That's because we are going to see a system make its way through. Now, when that system arrives is up to debate a bit because there's a lot of different model outputs, but it looks like there's at least some system. Either it's going to be in the middle, towards the beginning of the week, next week, or it's going to be later on. Something to keep an eye on moving forward. What it's also going to do is bring up warmer air, so a little bit below the seasonal average, a bit chilly side of fall. But as we get to the weekend, we're going to see those temperatures start to warm up, become quite mild. Looking at temperatures 10 to 15 degrees above the seasonal average this time of year, which means temperatures getting into the 50s and even low 60s by the time we get to Saturday and Sunday. And finally, we're going to stay on the trend of these temperatures because over the last 30 days, notice we've been on the warm side overall, especially with those high temperatures. Only a few days we got around and not below the seasonal average. We got some chilly nights, but it's been overall really riding warm so far this fall. And that's something the Climate Prediction Center was predicting over through October. Here's the 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. But notice this is for the beginning of October. I want to pull this forward through the whole month. And as I mentioned, we've been seeing the mild side of fall this entire month for the most part. And guess what? The Climate Prediction Center was basically seeing that unfolding because we never saw a below average trend at all. You know, it's just been warm. The Climate Prediction Center predicted this to be staying pretty mild through the entire month. And look at this. This is the most recent one, and that goes until the end of October. So the entire month has been above the seasonal average, and it looks like that's how we're going to end. Again, we still had some chilly days, and that includes today and going into the middle of the rest of this week. We can see staying in the 40s for those highs. But as we get into the weekend, we're going to finally see that more mild weather make its way back in and a bit more of that sunshine as well.